Hey guys, Marmalade here. How's it going? I hope you enjoyed that. It's a little different vlogging style than normal, and I'll talk about it later, but would like your input on what you thought about it. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my experience on this trail, what I went through and experienced, and also why I shortened my trip from 3 days and 2 nights to just 2 days and 1 night. So I started my first day at Cottonwood Trail at 8:20 in the morning. The parking lot there is about 9,900 feet of elevation. I had about 3.8 miles. The first, I would say, mile and a half were flat, and then it goes up pretty steeply. It goes from the parking lot, like I said, 9,900 feet up to 11,200 feet at the top of the pass at Cottonwood Pass. And that's where you join the PCT. Once at the PCT junction, I turned left going southbound, and it was much more pleasant than the big climb I just had. So I did another 5 miles on the PCT going southbound, and there was supposed to be one possible water spot there, and as you saw in the video, it was frozen. And I mean, it was probably 11 o'clock when I got there, maybe 10, and the small waterfall and stream going across the trail was frozen. I had to basically walk on ice to get across solid, so you can tell it's getting cold already at night. So I had originally brought 2.5 liters of water, not knowing, I thought there'd be water there, and there wasn't. That was probably, what, about, I don't even know, 5-6 miles into my day. And remember, I was originally only going to do 10 miles, so I was a little bit concerned. So once, like I said, I got to the pass and did the 5 miles on the PCT southbound, I took an exit going right or west and went down a couple thousand feet to the valley floor where all the meadows were. And all this time looking for water, and except for the frozen creek that I saw, I didn't see one speck of water, so it was a little bit concerning. Somewhere as I got to the bottom of the meadow, I was at my 10-mile mark. There wasn't really anywhere to camp, and also no water. The problem I had was I had done about 10-11 miles at this point, and about 10 miles, and remember I started with 2.5 liters of water. I had not even drunken a liter yet because I didn't know if I was going to ever see water, and I didn't know if I was going to see water this whole 30-mile loop or not. So I was rationing my water, but I did about 10 miles. Normally I do 1 liter per 4 miles. I'd done 10 miles and I hadn't even drunk a 1 liter. So I had technically had about 1.5 liters left, but I was trying to save it. So at the 10-mile mark, I was really concerned. I actually stopped, took a break, and ate something and started to inspect my Gaia app and my maps for potential water sources. When I talked to the ranger station, they said nobody had been out there for 2 months because of the fire ban. So normally the rangers are in the know on where the water is or isn't. But they really didn't know because nobody had been back there in almost, I think it was like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So I was one of the very first people, if not the first, to be back there since the fire ban. So although I've gone about 10 miles, I decided after looking at my maps, taking a break, I decided to keep going and try to find water. I didn't know if I should ration my water. Am I gonna have to use it for the whole 30.5 miles? Am I ever gonna see water? I didn't know. So like I said, I decided to keep on going. Looking at my map, the lower South Kern River Fork was coming up in a few miles. I couldn't tell exactly, but I decided I'm gonna go for it. If I can find the water, then I know I'm good, and if I have to, I'll carry it for the second and third day if I have to. So when I started going down, it was thankful it was flat and downhill all the way. As it turned out, I finally found water at about the 14-mile mark, and as you saw in the video, I was super excited. So I had hardly had any water, and it's 14 miles and had like 1 liter, so I just pounded a bunch of water and cameled up. And then I filled my 2 bottles, my 1.5 liter and my almost 1 liter. And then I have a 3 liter bag that's connected to my filter. I filled that up, so I had, what was that, 5.5 liters. So with only 16 miles to go technically over a couple more days, I thought if I have to ration this water out, at least I have enough water. So I didn't know what was coming up. And as it turned out, I wasn't even at the Kern River Fork yet. It was actually another mile down the road. So at the 15-mile mark, there was the Kern River, and you saw that a little bit. I was walking along it for a while. So I was happy to see that, and looking on the map, there's a lot of blue lines on my maps and my Gaia that show water sources, but that doesn't mean they're flowing. So this one was a substantial river. I knew I was following it by on the map. I was following it for a few miles, so I knew I'd be next to it. So I felt comfortable drinking water, and now the next thing to do was to look for camp. Really, the whole day I saw no camp spots, maybe a room for a single tent here and there, but really no actual campsites anywhere for that whole 14 miles. So I kept going along the river. And eventually at the 15.2 mile mark, I found that wide open, beautiful spot that I showed you in the video. And I mean, it could have held, I mean, literally 80 tents. But I took a spot pretty far away from where I was gonna eat and where the fire pit was. And of course there's a fire ban and, you know, not even any stoves. So I cold soaked my food, and that was interesting. I had my Mexican kind of rice and bean mix and did it in burritos, and that was really good. So for my first cold soaking experience, it wasn't too bad. So this time of year in late October, it gets dark pretty early, and it's dark late in the morning too. So by the time I finished eating, it was 5:30 to 6ish, and it was already starting to get dark and get cold quickly. It was a high of around 65 in the day, and it was getting cold quickly. So I cleaned up, put my bear canisters, all my food far away from my tent, went over there and changed into my sleeping clothes and had multiple layers because I knew it was going to get cold. And I got on my quilt about 6:30, somewhere in there. It was already, I would say, 50% dark at that point. So a little bit of a downer, and I expected it, was that it does get dark early and gets cold early. So I couldn't sit out. I couldn't do a fire because of the fire ban. so to keep warm and to enjoy the outdoors, and the campsite was amazing. So I basically, like I said, had to get in my quilt really fast and get all my layers on, and I got cozy and warm. But now it's like 6 p.m. I think is what time it was, and I was basically stuck in my tent till 6 a.m. if not closer to 7 before I got up, because it was so cold, and I was just barely comfortable. I had about 6 or 7 layers on my upper body and 2 layers, including my rain pants and my thermals on my bottoms, and I had 2 pair of socks on, and I just bundled it up, and I had 2 different hoodies I put on, and I was warm. But I mean, if it got maybe 5 or 10 degrees cooler, I might not have been comfortable, but I was prepared, and I was just warm enough. And my quilt, by the way, is a 10-degree quilt, so it handles cold weather. So I did watch one Netflix, I think an old Western, and then I went to sleep, and it was an interesting night. It was really cold, and it got down to 23 degrees. Ugh. Especially from a boy from San Diego, you know what I mean? I'm a mile from the beach. So a couple things at this point. I did wake up about 6. It was still pitch dark. 6:30, still pitch dark. It was starting to get light where I could see a little bit. Not that that matters, I have a headlamp. But about 6:45, it's starting to get decent light where you could normally, in a normal scenario, get up and get going. But I had 2 different thermometer. One's my watch and one's the actual thermometer. They both said 23 degrees. So the problem was wanting to get out at 6:30 in the morning in 23 degrees and change my clothes completely and pack everything up and be exposed to the cold. So, you know, I stayed in there till about 7, and I just got up and I just toughed it out, and had to go get something. I had to go get my bear canister and bring that all the way back. And then it was I tried to go as fast as I could, but man, was I freezing. Changed clothes, put everything away, packed up, and I was out by 7:50, which isn't bad. So at night, before I went to bed, I thought about my next plans for the next day a lot, because I had some decisions to make. Remember, I was going to go 10 miles roughly for 3 days and get that 30-mile loop and enjoy myself. Well, multiple things happened. I ended up going, as you know, 15.2 miles to get to water and feel comfortable that I had enough water. But also now I have half of the loop done. And the mix of being so cold, like if I'm through hiking and I get a cold night, I had a 28-degree night on the PCT on my through hike, and I was up on Fuller Ridge, and I just kept going. That's part of the deal. You know, it's not going to be every night, but when I'm through hiking, you have to weather whatever comes your way. I'm out there having fun, and I was just thinking, I'm only 15 miles from the end, and why subject myself to another one of those just freezing nights? You literally are in a cocoon. You can't move, because if you even move, then you let the cold in, and it's not really very enjoyable camping. And so it didn't make sense for me to get up early and hike 10 miles and stop at 1 o'clock and set up camp and just sit around, and then get cold again and do it all over just to hike, you know, 3 to 5 miles to the car. So I decided at that point, and wasn't sure about the water, that I needed to carry the water I needed for the rest of the way and just go for it, even though I knew I was going to have a big climb at the end. So funny how things worked out. As I left camp, like I said, at 7:50, I was by water for about the next 7 miles, which is just kind of ironic. But I was, for the next couple miles, by the lower Kern River that I was camped next to. And then when I turned off, away from that, I got in the Golden Trout Creek. So I would say, as I got next to the Golden Trout Creek, I had a good 5 to 7 miles of just gentle climbing. But it was made to be tough because of the tread on the trail. It was a very interesting kind of trail, and it was very difficult. 100% sand, but I would say 50% of it was deep sand. I felt like I was doing Navy SEAL training. So you know how hard backpacking is anyway, but if you add the elevation and, you know, carrying your pack, and then you're 50% of the time you're in deep sand, it was very difficult. I mean, talk about a workout. It was one of the hardest 2-day hikes I've ever done. And back on the elevation subject, I was always between 9,000 feet and 11,200. When I reached the PCT at the beginning, the peak was 11,200 feet. And when I was down camping the first night after the halfway mark, I was at 9,000 feet. So the whole hike was at a very high elevation, and I definitely felt it. Oh, another thing I just remembered too, as I'm going along the Golden Trout Creek for, I don't know, 5 to 7 miles, not only is it deep sand, but the trail would just disappear. Like, it would go, because it was sand, parts of it worn, parts of it just disappeared, and I don't know if people would go scatter in every direction, but literally the trail disappeared, I don't even know, 10 times. So I had to get out my Gaia app. Thank goodness, it's my new app I got. But I had laid out a line of the trail. So when I felt like I couldn't find the trail, I would just open up the app and just start walking towards it. So I definitely suggest getting it if you haven't gotten it already. It's great. I'm still learning it, but I love it. And I just follow that and get reconnected, and then I'd find the trail worn in again. But yeah, it was difficult between the sand and just losing the trail. It slowed me down for sure. Then after about, I don't know, 7 miles of that, and slowly, gradually going uphill, I got to the meadows part. I think it's called Big Whitney Meadow, and it's about, you saw that there is really, really open. and flat, and it was kind of warm. It got close to 70. I guess it was 65 degrees, but it just felt hot. You're just always exposed out there. And I had about 4 miles of flat, you know, but in deep sand, so it was very hard work. And then you saw towards the end of that, I actually had to wade through almost knee-deep water. It actually had a layer of ice on top. I had to break through the ice to get through it, but I tried getting through it up and down the creek, and I couldn't do it, so I just walked through it. So I filmed that, if you noticed. And then there was the climb. So the climb was tough because I was going from I climbed up about from 9,000 at camp to about 10,000 feet up that Golden Trout Creek, and then went to the meadow. So I gained about 1,000 feet, but I still had another 1,300 feet to go. And that was this big, steep set of switchbacks. And like I said, I mean, you know, you're climbing elevation up to 11,000 feet, so it's getting higher and higher, so it's harder to breathe. But also, one of the things I didn't really mention was I was kind of under the weather, and it's not to make excuses. I mean, I still did it in 2 days, but I would say if I had to measure it, I was only at 75%, and I had some crud in my throat, a little bit of a fever, but not too bad, but enough to, I definitely felt it. And then you add the elevation and the sand. It was a hard hike, but it felt much harder because of the way I felt internally. And then the elevation kind of gave me headaches sometimes. So yeah, I had all kinds of things going on there. Thank goodness for ibuprofen, helped a lot. But yeah, so I started the climb. And the climb was about 2 straight miles of very steep switchbacks, very pretty, you know, and I showed a couple of views looking back down the meadow where I hiked through. But yeah, it climbed and it climbed and it climbed. I had to take quite a few. I normally don't take as many breathers anymore, but I had to take quite a few. And finally got to the top, so I took a break, and you saw me there taking a break and just catch my breather. And what was great is I only had 3.8 miles downhill and flat to the car, so that was a relief at that point. So as it turned out, per my Gaia app, it wasn't 30.5 miles, it was 31.5. So I did 15.2 miles the first day and 16.3 on day 2 with an exceptional amount of climbing. And actually, let me go over the numbers. Let me get my numbers real quick. So the totals were as follows. For ascent, I had 3,824 feet of ascent going up and 3,826 feet going down. So almost exactly the same. So for how much of the middle section of my hike was flat, that was a lot of down, a lot of up. Yeah, so overall it was a pretty tough hike considering the elevation and how I was feeling. All right, before I conclude this, I wanted to go over a couple observations that was kind of unique about this hike. I saw plenty of human, horse, cow, deer, and bear footprints, but I didn't see one single animal. And if you guys notice in my videos, I almost always see animals, but to have 31.5 miles in the wilderness and not seeing a single bigger animal or human was weird, especially the human part. I have never done anything this distance and not seen another live soul out there, so that was really unique. And the other part that made it kind of weird, which I've never experienced, was there was almost no small animals. I almost didn't see a single bird. I saw just a couple, and I saw like 4 of those little chipmunks, no squirrels. So literally almost no animals whatsoever. And it was weird because, talk about alone, it was like dead quiet, except for the wind in the trees, which is beautiful. Literally no sounds besides that. And maybe an airplane that flew over once in a while. But you know what I'm saying? It was the weirdest experience. It was almost eerie. You know how animals get weird if there's, you know, an earthquake or something about to happen. I don't know if that was it, but man, it was so weird. I mean, not in a bad way. It just was so different. I'm used to seeing animals, and especially with nobody being out there for so long with the National Forest being closed, I thought the animals would just be everywhere. And there was tracks everywhere, but I didn't see a single animal. So I don't know if I scared them off, but that was a kind of a weird experience. So again, despite how I felt, it was a really good experience. It was nice to get one more trip out there before everything kind of shuts down for the winter. And I felt kind of special to be out there. I don't know if I'm the first one to be in that section in the last 2 months, but like I said, nobody's out there, and they just started the permits again. So, and I'm sure they'll give out more permits, but the weather's going to keep it to where nobody can be out there. I know people go out there and day hike from the parking lot, but that's about it. But I felt very lucky just to be out there and get one more shot at it. So on this format, what do you think? I always battle. I've always done, like if you watch my Trans Catalina trail hike, it was 5 days of hiking. I always do, even when I was on the PCT, I do 1 daily video, but I think it's hard for people to watch that many. So what do you prefer? Do you like seeing, like in this hike, would you rather see 2 individual hikes or it all in one longer format? This is an experiment. I'll try to do this some more, but I kind of like this where, do you want me to talk? I didn't talk at all. Do you want me to talk? A little bit, none, a lot? What do you like? But also, do you like it all in one longer version of this? This is an experiment, but I kind of like the way it turned out, but just, I want to get your opinion, so let me know down below. So last few things, I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun for me. I'm glad I got to do it. It was more difficult than normal, but I got through it as always. So I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe give some ideas to hike out there. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Just hit the subscribe button and also hit the little bell so you can be notified every time I post a video. If you'd like to help support the channel and give me more opportunities to do these kind of videos and adventures, please go to my description box below. There you'll find there's a link to my Patreon page, and you become a patron for as little as $1 a month. That's only $12 a year, and you can help support me, and you get special content before everybody else. Also, I have my merch site down below with my marmalade logo. If you'd like to get something maybe before Christmas for a loved one, check it out. It'll help me out too. And lastly, it's pretty cool. Check down below for the Amazon affiliate links that I have. What they are is basically links to all the gear that I either have currently or have had or I think is good for backpackers. And you simply you find something you like, you just click on the link, it takes you to Amazon, you purchase it at no extra charge, the exact same price, but because I sent you there, I get a small percentage of that. So that helps me out a lot. So just check it out, see, maybe something for Christmas. All right, finally, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, see you down the trail.